My name is Christina. I'm here today with Amanda Winkler. Amanda is a colleague of mine. We've known each other for 10 years now, maybe a little over 10 years. And I wanted to do an interview with her, kind of riffing off again off of the videos that I've done priorly. And we're talking basically about everyday people using the power of their mind to change their life for the better. And how do we do that? How have we come from where we were before, who we were before, to where we are now? And so Amanda is one of those people that has completely changed herself for the better, I feel. And I just wanted to talk about her story and share her knowledge and share her journey with everyone. And maybe it's an inspiration to someone, and it sparks an interest in you to either work on yourself, start working on yourself, or to continue to work on yourself so you can become a better and better human being. So, with that said, Amanda, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and a little bit about your previous background and what you do now. Because right now, you're doing a lot of like movement therapy, yoga, mindfulness. You have your own program going in January. So let's just take it back to where you were before this fabulous human being sitting in front of you today. Okay.
Thanks, Christina. So Christina and I believe, met in about 2007. Were you at Ohm Factory at that time?
2009, but you're
Okay.
close. Yes.
Okay. So 2009-ish. And at that time I was working in the fashion industry, which is what I moved to New York City for. So I grew up in upstate New York. It's considered central New York. But for most New York City people, it's way upstate in Syracuse, New York, and a very cold, wintry place. I went to college for fashion, and so always knew that I was going to move to a big city because that's the choice that you have if you're going to actually do that as a career. And New York was the place. And then I was working in that industry from about 2005 when I graduated college until 2011. And then during that time, I met Christina. I got into yoga. I got into yoga really as a way to provide me with an outlet while I was working in fashion, which was for me not the healthiest environment. I think it was very long hours, not the most empowering situation. Basically, I did a few different jobs in that world. I worked in production, I worked in design, and I was somebody who always and very much now wants to empower other people and women and help people feel whole and connected. And when I was in that environment, I felt I was around a lot of people who didn't have that kind of idea. For lack of a better way to express it, maybe they were insecure about their own position and what they were doing, and they felt like they had to keep other people down. And so that unfortunately was my experience, but I think the work as a whole just wasn't the right fit for me either, because I, felt like I just like the sense of urgency that was there. I just didn't feel like matched my desire of what I wanted to bring to the world. And it was something that people, when people are buying clothes, something that they want, not necessarily something that they need. So I quickly, in the 5 years or so that I worked in that industry, discovered it was not the right fit. So I got into yoga. A friend brought me to a class at Equinox in Soho. And I still remember going to that first class, and I was a runner at the time. So I liked to move my body. And I was kind of just like, oh, I'll go to this yoga class with you. Didn't think I would like it. And I remember the feeling afterwards. We went out to dinner after, and it was like, my body like felt tingly and just kind of, so yoga, like I just felt this immediate thing after my first class, like something shifted within me. And I don't know if it was just like igniting the different systems in my body in a new way, like circulation, stimulating my organs. I have no idea, but something happened on an energetic level that changed my life. And then I was like, I got to go do this again. I don't know what it is, but I have to do it. And then that's how I found Ohm Factory, which is how we met, because it was literally 1 block away from my office.
I love that. And, it's interesting, to know that you were coming to Ohm Factory just to take classes as a student, still working in that fashion industry. And then I remember just one day when you were like, okay, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to become a yoga teacher. And it was really the industry, because you felt that negativity from the industry and you didn't feel like it was serving your higher purpose. I feel like that's the reason, like the universal reason why you didn't stay at that job, whether they weren't satisfied with your performance, whether it wasn't the right fit of the company, whatever
Right.
the reasoning behind, you losing that job was, ultimately it led you to open your eyes and say, I didn't belong anyways, right? So I feel like these internal energetic patterns within us that are like, oh, I don't like my job, or I don't like this environment, like kind of reverberates and sends that message to the universe. And then the universe sends the message back. Is like, oh, you don't like it? Okay, it's done. It's over. Now deal with it. Now what you're going to do. And I feel like you took it into your own hands and said, well, I have no idea what I'm going to do, but I know I'm going to do something. And so tell me, how did that like shift, like losing the fashion industry job led you to the path of learning yoga, teaching yoga, and then everything else that followed?
It's a really good question, because it's easy to, it's, what do they say? 2020, hindsight is 2020. It's easy to look back on it now and be like, oh, all of these things were conspiring for me. But at the time I was like, oh my God, my life is fucked. Like, it's like,
It's
what the hell am I
devastating.
doing? Like, I have nothing to hold on to. So it was very disorienting at the time. But I will tell you this. Because of my yoga practice, while I was going through these transitions at the company that I worked at, I always had this kind of safe haven. And so what happened was I became more and more discontent with what was happening at work and just like how I fit into that world. I decided that I was going to do a teacher training, and I had no intention of becoming a teacher. I was like, I don't know, I'm just going to do this thing because I want to learn more about it and it feels good. And it'll give me something to do on the weekends that will be good for my soul. And that was my intention. And then I lost my job in fashion about 2 months into the teacher training. So I look back on it. Yeah. And I'm like, had I not had that going on, I think I would have felt really like disoriented and not sure what to do at all. But I think because I had that, I had this spiritual practice and this community and this thing to throw myself into a little bit at the time. So that really helped. How I became a yoga teacher after that, I mean, I think, as you said, it was kind of the universe conspiring. I don't know, because I just fell into it. I think it was like at Ohm Factory at that time, I think Farah, the owner, was expanding and starting to put more classes on the schedule. And as that happened, I think, the teachers that were teaching, there weren't enough teachers. So it just kind of was like a happy accident that I was graduating at that time. And he always had a great way of looking at new teachers, of being like, oh yeah, you can do it. Whereas I think,
yes.
Right, a lot of studios in New York, it was like, no bueno, like there's no way that you're going to bring a brand new teacher and just let them teach classes. I mean, with that being said, I was teaching a lot of $20 classes at like 8 in the morning, and
that's a reality
to
that's
one
a reality.
person.
Yeah.
But it was a building time for me, and luckily I was able to do it and make it work. So I look back like lovingly at those times where I had one person and I'm like, oh, I gotta teach this one person. But it was such a good experience because I learned how to teach through those trials and tribulations. And, you teach to one person and they come to class and you learn so much from it, even if in the moment you're like, oh, I want the energy of a group. So yeah, that was kind of how the transition happened, a happy accident. But also, the intentional part of it was that I took that training. So I set it in motion unknowingly in some way. I realized I was creating a catalyst. I just didn't know where it would take me.
Exactly. I feel like, once we put these little nuggets of information, these seeds, like how we like to say it, planting the seeds into our subconscious mind, and then just surrendering to it, the universe, the God, goddesses, whatever you want to believe in or think of, it just sets that path into motion. And it's like sometimes you're not even ready, or you think you're not ready, but ultimately you have already started the journey and planted those seeds within your subconscious mind for the change to occur. And the same goes from like coming from a home that may not be the most supportive environment for a child or for an adolescent, and then moving away from that because you want something better for yourself. You know that the environment that you're in is not conducive to your growth and expansion of your mind and spirit and ultimately yourself, right?
Right.
So it's really, this is the topic of these interviews that I'm doing, is basically showing people that you can change yourself, right? You don't have to get stuck in the ways, or the cards that were dealt to you by birth. You don't have
Right.
to be stuck in it. Like through my acupuncture work, I talk a lot about tapping into the DNA and epigenetics. And recently I did another interview with a friend on neuroplasticity, and really, we'll delve deeper through a series of other interviews, how on a scientific basis, how this stuff actually happens in our body, in our brain, in our cells, in our neurons. But with you, I just wanted you to share your story and your journey, because I have seen your evolution, and even like teaching yoga and then getting into aerial yoga, because we both had that same path. Like I started at Home Factory as a karmi, as someone who was doing the service for the studio so I can get classes back. And then
Right.
I did the teacher training, and then I did the aerial yoga teacher training. And then you and I, we did the 108 hours of anatomy for movement therapists and yoga teachers. So it was like, wow, you were that person kind of next to me who was also going through all these transitions and bettering yourself every step of the way, because you knew there was something bigger. You knew that there was something greater for you out there, and you set
Yeah.
those wheels in motion. So tell me then a little bit about, okay, you did yoga and then you got into aerial yoga as well. So tell me a little bit about that transition.
I think that was another farmer's choice. I think
Yes.
he was like, oh, you're just going to teach this thing. And at the time when I was basically trying to be a yoga teacher, it was like another opportunity to teach. So I did it. And I would say there are a lot of parts of it that I really enjoyed, but it was not the right modality for me in the long run. I think like beginner's class in aerial yoga is great for me, and I mean I probably would still love to teach it because using the hammock more as like a tool to feel different things, some kind of like external resistance. However, like actually being an aerialist, not the best for me. I think I had like a shoulder injury that kept getting annoyed from teaching aerial. And aside from that, I just, I'm like an airy person naturally. I mean, we'll get into that kind of
Yes,
what do I
yes.
want to say? Like the ethereal part of things. But I'm a Libra, I'm an air sign. I am, very like creative, go with where the wind takes me kind of person. So like more of that is not good for me.
Yes, you need more
um,
grounded practices. Yes.
Totally. Like,
Mm.
I mean, as my teaching and my movement practice myself has evolved, it's like a lot of even like grounding yoga, Pilates, like strength training with weights, like those all are amazing for me. And they all make me feel really strong and really confident and really, sorry, it's so annoying that I have to keep hitting it, but I'm just going to keep doing it.
It's okay. It's okay.
And just like really grounded in myself. Whereas aerial for me, it was like the opposite energy. So I think, but it's a cool lesson too, to see like, hey, that wasn't probably the best for me and like my constitution as a human being. And, sometimes you have to discover those things by doing them. Like fashion wasn't the greatest thing for me either, because I think, I had some negative body image stuff when I was younger. And that really, I mean, I think we can mostly agree that like the fashion industry as a whole
Oh,
historically wasn't really great for body image and that kind of, instilling confidence in women of all
yeah.
shapes and sizes. And so I think, yeah, it's just like you realize those things like that, probably from like a mental health perspective, not the best situation for me. Like aerial yoga, not really the best for me personally, but I think it's really beneficial for a lot of people. So
But
yeah,
can you
that was,
touch upon that a little bit more? Because I think
yeah,
it's very important. A lot of people do deal with poor body image or poor self image, and that goes back to like, oh my God, we do create the reality that we have with the power of our mind. So the more we stay in these negative images in our mind, it lingers on. And that's why for a lot of people, it takes years to get out of those patterns. I myself was one of those people. And earlier this year, I spoke in a video about my eating disorder journey and how all of that transpired for me. So, sharing your story and letting people know that you have come out of that is really valuable. And then you can talk a little bit about the running because that was yet another outlet to like stay
yeah,
healthy and have like the fit body and all of the
yes,
stuff that comes with that mindset, because it is a mindset, right?
yes. I think, and I was saying this to you earlier when we spoke, but our kind of like Western society as a whole is very focused on external goals, financial, career, physical. It a lot of things are wrapped up in like how much money do you have, and what is your job title, and how do you look, and all of these things that you can get so wrapped up in like trying to be this perfect version of yourself, which does not exist. So I think, but when I was in college, I got really into running. The negative of it was this sense of control, and it was like, oh, I have to do this every single day, which wasn't good for me mentally or physically even. But what I've realized looking back on it is the deeper connection that I had to it was that I was out in nature by myself. I could just put on my shoes and go and walk out my door. And so it was freedom. I think I was seeking this sense of freedom, right? When you're trying to control so many aspects of your life, then you have an outlet that feels freeing for you. And I would have all of these creative ideas when I was running. And so it really was meditative for me in a lot of ways. But it was like the only thing I was doing to create those practices in my life. So, just like doing any one thing all the time, it's not
Yeah.
always great. As you were saying, the same thing for you when you were training 3 hours a day. Like, it can start off in maybe in a healthy way, but then it can become another way to control, right? Like the way that you look or the way that you feel. And so when I started doing yoga, actually, one of the things that I noticed right away was that there were all these different people of different shapes and sizes and ethnicities, even though I know it's probably not like the most inclusive situation of like all backgrounds, but there were just tons of different kinds of people. And I remember seeing people wearing like yoga clothes and just doing their practice and not caring how they looked, or that's how I perceived it. And I was like, this is amazing. Coming from this place of trying to control how I look and just seeing all these different bodies in a room moving and breathing, like that for me was an aha moment of like, wow. And then I think yoga was a way for me to connect with myself on a deeper level. And for sure, there were still like, I want the teacher to see that I can stand on my head and that I can achieve this pose, and kind of the ego part of it, where you're like, I want to be like the best student, and so the perfectionist in me came out in that way too. But eventually, when I realized like, I'm not the best, like I can't do all the stuff, so like, why am I bothering to try to have this perfect practice? And then be like, what's the point if not going to do something or feel something deeper than just like another way of controlling something in my life, right? So I think through yoga, but through other things too, like my evolution happened. It was realizing that I was in pain when I was only doing yoga. My knees hurt sometimes, my wrist hurt, my shoulder hurt, my neck hurt, all of these things, because it can't be everything, nothing can be everything. Aerial can't be everything. Strength training can't be everything. I started to realize, and I was lucky to have some great teachers and some great mentors who were in the yoga world, actually, who started implementing resistance training and other things in their own practice and talking about it, that yoga didn't need to be everything for me or for my students. And so that's where I started developing these other practices. Resistance training, like with resistance bands, with weights, for me is like super grounding, stabilizing, strengthening. It makes me feel connected, because when you're only using your body weight as resistance, it can be great, but you feel new things when you add in a tool.
I definitely agree, because like for me, I was always a natural mover and a meditator from an early age, because of my father, and who has exposed me to that aspect of reality. So I'm super grateful for that. But ultimately, like aerial was not just the way, right? And yoga for me also, I couldn't just do yoga. That's why honestly I transitioned to also do aerial. And then once I decided to go back to school and nurture myself further in that realm, and got exposed to Qigong through Chinese medicine and massage therapy that I was studying at the time, it really brought me that sense of groundedness. However, if I was just to meditate every day and only do that, I would become stagnant, right? We talked about that earlier. And it's, at least in Chinese medicine, the way we see, when qi is stagnant, there's pain, there's blockages. And ultimately, when the energy is within us is not moving, disease occurs, right? It's stuck in certain areas of the body. Maybe that's your shoulder and you have shoulder pain. Maybe that's your liver and you have liver problems. Maybe that's, the uterus, or whatever the area of the body is. But when the energy is not flowing freely, we're stuck, and we can literally be stuck in life. So I'm really
so true.
right? And so all of these, as metaphysical as it sounds, that what goes on in your mind does transpire outwards into the real life, into this dense reality that we occupy. And so it's really nice to see your progression from the yoga and finding that aerial was not your thing, and then really realizing that you need all these other tools and things and practices to keep yourself healthy, right? So you found those ways that work for you, because everyone's different.
Right. And even
Yeah.
from an energetic perspective, like you were saying, I mean, I went through, I think when I was in pain and I was only doing yoga or only doing running, then I would only do that thing and then I would stop. And then when you're not doing anything, then you're feeling that heaviness too, in like, a really stagnant way. So I think it was important for me to try all of these different things and slowly realize what works for me. And it's taken me, a long time, 20 years at this point, I don't know, to kind of figure this stuff out. But now what it's done is it's created relationships for me. So like I've tried all this stuff. I realize, what works. Some days if I'm feeling low energy, but I still want to move because movement feels good for me, I have tools. Like maybe that's a gentle yoga day. Maybe that's a walk outside. Sometimes like because of the holidays and we had some people at our house, not very many because of COVID, but a couple people stayed with us, and I was feeling like stuck in my house with the kids and the guests and the all the stuff going on, and I just was like, I need to go outside and I need to run and I need to sprint for like a minute and I need to get this out of me. So knowing too, like having tools to deal with anxieties, or different kinds of things that come up for you, because I think we all deal with, whether it's like a low level or a high level, just having that understanding of like, hey, if I'm feeling like this and I'm about to yell at somebody, not saying I never do it, but if I can, maybe I can get out of my own shit for a minute and move my body in a way that's going to help me channel that energy in a new way, right? And that could also be, it doesn't have to be movement. It could be meditation. It could be going for an acupuncture session. It could be talk therapy. Like there's a lot of different ways to do things. But it's funny, I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago. It was Brene Brown's podcast, and she had Dax Shepard and Tim Ferriss on it.
Oh, wow. A friend of mine just recommended that episode. And I'm like, I haven't seen it. That's so funny.
Right? Doesn't that always happen like that? And so they were talking about, she asked them, like, what is one thing that you each do that's really hard that you do every day or like regularly that is like such an important part of your life, but it's hard and you force yourself to do it. And both of them said exercise, both of them. And even Dax, who I think, had a relapse this year, he was saying that, that that's actually like his top thing, even over like AA, for how he's able to channel his energy and like deal with his addiction. And, both of those things working together, not like you don't need AA, but just like, I think the power of movement for your body, especially in a world where we're on our computers a lot, we're on our phones, we're sitting, and it's this time of year too, where at least where we live in the Northeast, it's cold. It's like the ability to move is, it's so powerful. I know for me, it's so powerful, and then understanding ways to move to transform that energy. So am I feeling anxious? Would it help me to go for a run? Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I don't have a lot of energy. Maybe I want to just go do something soft for myself. So, and I think that that's what's taken me a long time to understand, that it's not like, oh, well, yesterday running felt amazing because I had anxiety that I needed to get out. So let me replicate that. Well, maybe today's a new day. And if I do that, perhaps I go out and it doesn't feel good because it's too much, right?
That's the awareness. That is the key, right? Having the awareness to identify what is helpful in that moment in time. And just like you said, there may be days when you actually do have the emotion of anger, and we can't suppress the emotions, but having the proper outlet for that emotion to be expressed, so it's not stuck within your body, within your cellular imprint, which is going to be carried over and over again, because every time you feel that emotion, you're staying in it and not changing your patterns of behavior, right? When you're aware of the emotional state that you're in and you choose the correct practice for that moment in time, you're actually able to step outside of that and change your habits so you can really change yourself for the better. Otherwise, you're operating on your past auto mode and continuing to be the same person instead of changing yourself for the better. And like you said, yeah, there is not an ideal self, but there is that higher self, that higher potential that we can strive for just through being aware of where we are in space and time in this moment, right?
What do you,
This present
I
moment.
love what you said about the awareness piece. And I think like sometimes maybe people and maybe people out there listening are like, well, how do I cultivate that? For you, like, I mean, I want to ask you, how do you cultivate greater awareness, or how have you done that in your life?
Yeah, for me, it's been a long journey, and I have been in the Eastern practices, in Eastern modalities for quite a while now. But I think once I started meditating on a regular basis, not just like a one-off or when I go to class or, when I feel like I really need it, but really setting the time to do it every single day, even if it's a minute when I brush my teeth, even if it's when I'm doing my dishes, that I'm completely aware of what I'm doing instead of multitasking. For me, I was never a good multitasker. So when things were asked of me, like, oh, do this, do da, 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 it's like, okay, I look at the picture and I understand that I cannot multitask. So I do one task at a time and I do it well. And I always would
Right.
get irked by people who are like, "Oh, what was that email about?" And I'm like, "Well, if you actually read the email completely and not just like half-ass it, you will get all the information." And so I feel like for me, there was this innate ability to just tap into the present moment more so than maybe your average person because I was in those types of practices already.
Okay.
However, I think becoming aware is just bringing yourself to this present moment. So, like right now, I'm talking to you, I'm not thinking about what's coming after this or what came before this. And I'm not saying that we need to completely shut all of our thoughts, right? That's not the practice that I do, but I am
Right.
constantly trying to be here now as opposed to, okay, what's coming next, what's coming next. And again, don't get me wrong, that does happen because I do map my days and I do have things on my to-do list, but it's rarely an overwhelm these days. And it's more of, okay, I know that at 2 o'clock I have this, that, but in this moment in time, when I'm with Amanda, I'm with Amanda. When I'm with this person, I'm with that person. Before it would be like, I'm on my phone talking to my husband.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm not fully present. And those things seep into every area of our life, not just with our loved ones, not just at work, but in everything that we do. And so that's how I practice awareness, is really with everyday tasks, because starting to meditate, you'll really start to focus more. You're not meditating, you're just focusing, right? And that's
I
kind
love
of like
that.
the
I think that's,
precursor, right?
it's so practical too, just like to really focus on what you're doing in that moment. And interestingly, I mean, I think a lot of people say this actually, and we know it, but we don't all do it, is to like not look at our phones in the morning, right? Or if we have the luxury of not doing that, which I know not everybody does, but it's something that I have been working hard on. Like, just when I wake up, don't look at my phone. And I have a lot of boundaries with my phone actually when it comes to answering messages and stuff. I mean, anyone who tunes in, who texts me, might know I won't answer you for 5 hours sometimes. And it's not because I don't care. It's just that when I answer, I want to answer. And when I'm with my kids, if I'm in that moment with them, I want to be with them. Or I don't want people to think I'm available all the time, because I'm not, And so in the morning, I found too, if I get up and spend time with my kids and make breakfast. And I have a movement practice that I do every morning if I can. If I do all of those things, then maybe at 9:30, 10, I might look at my phone. And so that I know for me is really helpful because it's like this instant gratification sometimes to look at it, and we can know it and still do it because it gives you that
It
what do I
gives
want to
you,
say?
yeah, it gives you that dopamine, that happy
Yes, thank you.
substance, that's
Yes.
like,
Oh
oh,
my God.
yes,
I got new likes. Oh,
exactly.
new follower. Oh, it's that
Yes.
external validation, right? And one of the freeing things for me is I've started my business up and like really branched out on my own recently after taking some time off was it doesn't really matter if I reach 2 people or I reach 100 people. And I know like I have to remind myself of this every day because my ego is like, oh no, I want more people to care about what I'm doing. But the reality is I need to do it for myself. I need to do it because I want to share what I have to share and because I want to bring it out into the world. And if people connect to that, then then it's great. If they don't, then maybe I need to change something, right? But it's I can't do it. I can't do it because I'm looking to be accepted or looking for other people to tell me that what I'm doing is good or not good. And that's been really interesting too. I feel like another theme that keeps coming up for me is like who you surround yourself with. My husband's been saying it for years and just realizing like it's so important. It's so important to just seek out those people and connect with those people who are on that same wavelength, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I love what you said. You're a mother now, and so your whole entire journey since I've known you, with movement and transforming yourself, and then becoming a mom while you're still teaching. And at that time, you were still even in the aerial world, if I remember, with your first child, you were
Yes.
still teaching aerial yoga. And so these are all transitions, that took you to this higher state of awareness. It's like, hey, who am I? What works for me? And then ultimately the message that you can carry on for generations, right? That legacy that you can pass on to your children as well, to care for themselves, to connect to
Yeah.
themselves instead of let me connect to the world. And it's great, wanting to make a difference in the world, but we can't make a difference and change the entire world if we're not able to tap within. And so what is your experience now as a mom? Like how has your entire journey, um, kind of shaped you as a mother? Has it? Do you see anything seeping into that area of your life, or no? Or even with your new business also?
Yeah. I mean, I think it informs my parenting for sure. And I think my parenting informs, the way that I operate in my business. I guess like as a whole person, you can't just separate everything, even though you need to some extent. But I would say that one thing that's really helped me, I think becoming a mom made me a lot more selective with my time. And just because I just don't have the same capacity that I had before I had my children, because it's, I have to also spend time with them, spend time with my husband, spend time with my business, spend time with my clients, spend time with my other family. And it just makes you more selective with what you're giving your energy to. So for me, it was like another feeling of like being empowered. When I was pregnant with Benjamin, I remember just feeling like, I don't know, like this deeper sense of connection to myself. I think, and naturally so, I guess, because you're carrying a human being and like your body's going through all of these changes. And for me, it was a very powerful time. I know, people have different feelings when they're pregnant, but for me, it was really powerful. And I think it helped me to realize too, like I was running around the city teaching all these classes and, doing it for, I don't know what. I mean, I guess the money, the,
Right? Making a living.
yeah, right.
Trying.
That thing. But I think sometimes you need to take a step back. This has been my experience in life. Like, you need to take a step back and reevaluate, rather than just like being caught in the perpetual emotion of things. And when you take a step back, you realize too, you always make it work. I didn't work for an entire year and a half. Like, and my husband was overseas. I mean, we were existing on like one salary with two kids, but you just change your life and you figure it out. And then it transforms you, because I think I can easily be somebody who just like goes and continues to do things. Although I say that and then I realize I keep shifting my life, so maybe not. But
That's
that
the
doesn't work for
awareness,
me.
Amanda. That's the awareness. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the ability to step back, or, just to spark change. Like, and we were talking a little bit, because I have my movement program starting in January. And one of the things, I keep calling it a transformational movement program, because it's an immersive program. There's, some like spiritual connecting components in it as well. And I think for me, the transformation is in doing the work, right? So for all of us is like, we can learn about something, we can study it, but it's in the practice of doing it.
Exactly. That's exactly what I tell my clients and my students all the time. It's like, I can spit all this knowledge at you. You can read all the books. You can know it all. I know a few people who know it all. And it's like, why is there no change? Why is there no tangible change that you can see in your life? And that's because there's lack of application. So when people actually step into themselves and apply the knowledge that they've accumulated or was given to them, or however they came about it, then the change occurs, right? That's why I say I can wish for my life to be different. I could meditate all day long.
Right.
Ultimately, I still have to act and do something about it for my life to change. It's not just going to fall from the sky. So,
Right.
yes, plant the seeds and then act, right?
It reminds me of when I was teaching teacher trainings. You would talk about like the yamas and the niyamas, and you can tell people, like, I mean, we can all think, oh, nonviolence. Yeah, of course. And then you go and you're on the subway and you're like, F you to someone.
Exactly.
And then you come in and then I'm like teaching people and I'm like, be nonviolent. Like I could never be that person who is like self-righteous about shit that I haven't done yet. A lot of the stuff that I teach is the stuff I'm working on myself. Like, am I present with my kids? Sometimes I'm really not.
That's fair. That is fair. Yes.
But I know it, and I can choose to change it when I notice it, or I can choose to not. And sometimes I choose not to. And sometimes I try to be better. And, I think like that's all we can do as humans, instead of trying to portray a certain thing. Like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm in a blank room right now with pillows all over the floor, as you know, because the sound wasn't good. I mean, I'm not going to show you my like perfectly clean house, because it's just not. But you might see a snippet of me in a room that looks clean. It's just, I think that's the one thing with social media too, is sometimes you can look at someone and be like, wow, they have it all together. And it's like, I don't need to show everybody like the messes that are me, but at the same time, I try to peel back the curtain a little bit and say, hey, I'm doing this work on myself. But it is the practice, the application. I like how you said that if you're not doing the work to create the change, then it can't happen. You can study it, you can think about it, you can read about it, but unless you're doing it, it's never going to actually create change. You'll just take the same issues that you have and apply it to the next thing that you're trying to work on, right?
I think living in a city, any big city, I presume, it's the most challenging. And I also feel like it's the best school, because it challenges you to practice. And if you're a teacher, if you are a facilitator, a mentor, a coach of any sort, and or just a regular human who practices this, you are challenged on a daily basis. And for me, going back to that, like how do I practice awareness and how do I create change in my life? A real life example, I was walking my dog the other night and he just started to speed up a little bit. And even though we were on a crosswalk, this car was not going to stop. And at that moment, there was a split second when I wanted to say, oh, F you, dude in the car who is speeding. But then the other side of me, the aware side of me said, no, I'm going to show him a smile that even though he's speeding, it's okay, because in this moment, I stopped and I looked at him and I smiled and he looked at me and I was like, right? Like, where are you going? It's not the right way for you. And I smiled at him. And then from his look like this, he went like, and he stopped the car. And my husband was with me. He was like, did he just laugh at you? Like he went on that negative, like, oh, I'm going to show him,
Right.
And I said, no, not at all. I just smiled at him and he smiled back. And it just completely changed the situation. And I have to tell you, I practiced this on the subway pre-COVID so much, because people would like shove and bump into you. And it's like so easy to be reactive, even when we have these practices, these yoga practices or mindfulness practices. And I can only imagine how hard it is when you don't, right? When you don't have it. And so I guess the takeaway from all of this, what I would like people to take away is just find the tools that work for you and practice throughout the day. It's not like, oh, I need to practice for 2 hours every single day. It's like, no, practice a minute this day. And maybe tomorrow you'll have 10 minutes. And maybe the next day you will have 2 hours that you crave, but it doesn't have to be 2 hours every day, right? Is that your experience as well?
I completely agree with you. I feel that way in every aspect of my life, is that I don't know if this is just how I operate or this is most people or this is society, but I feel like I, in my past, was like all or nothing. Like my house is either spotless or dirty. Like my dishes are all in the sink or they're completely done. I'm doing an hour yoga practice or I'm doing nothing. That does not work for me at all, especially since becoming a parent, because I feel like I have to chunk my time in little bits. But now it's like 20 minutes of movement, if that's what I have, is better than 0 minutes. Tidying up my living room, for 10 minutes is better than 0, and then slowly you're kind of taking care of yourself and the people around you by doing these little practices and these rituals that support your life. And I think, that's the awareness thing too. Like you said, it can just start with being aware of brushing your teeth, being aware of chewing your food, like little tiny things, being aware of, I was about to react this way. And I noticed it in the moment and I stopped myself. And maybe tomorrow I won't be able to do that, but I did it today. And so it's like little by little by little, those actions add up. And then I think that's when your life changes. And I don't know, I feel like you're similar in this way. Like you obviously like had all this higher education and you've done all these things, but it was interesting when we talked that you were like, you were still coming up against some of the same issues that you had prior to doing all of that. It seems like you decided to really change those things that were holding you back. And it didn't matter that you had all this knowledge and all of this stuff. It was like something within. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, like exactly. And I needed a little push from someone else to bring me back and say, hey, you're stuck in these ways, right? Like it's hard sometimes to see yourself because you live with yourself every day, right? And sometimes
Right.
the people that you live with may point out the negatives about yourself, and that can bring you down, right? So
Hmm.
that's the reality of living in a partnership with another human
Sure.
being, whether it's a close friend that you share the same space with as roommates, whether that's a love relationship, a marriage, or whatever type of partnership. But sometimes in those environments, people do push your buttons, and they
Right.
really reveal to you those parts of yourself that sometimes you just don't want to deal with, or you're not ready to see. And when I started working with my mentor, who has a whole program where we rewire ourselves, and I
Mm,
knew, and I've been doing all those things, but again, not as regularly. So now that
right.
it's been like a constant every single day, put in the work, put a freaking timer. I tell my clients in my program, like, put a timer, set it for 5 minutes, because, like, we can be on social media scrolling for hours. I don't
Right.
do that. Like, I give myself half an hour a day, and that's it. Like, today we're doing this live thing because I
Right.
want to share our knowledge. But ultimately, for me, yeah, don't touch your phone the first 20 minutes when you wake up. Don't look at the screen if you can help it before going to bed, unless it's like a meditation that you have to put on the computer or your phone. Set five
Right.
minutes for yourself to clear your clutter. Like, all these little things that I do for myself, I share with my clients so they can be better. And ultimately, that's why you're doing the programming that you're doing, so you can help people do what you've done for yourself. And I'm the same way.
100%. A
you
hundred
know
percent. Like that is, yeah, I couldn't have said it better. It's, and I've been working with a mentor too. And one of the things that she said is the reason that you do a program, like, and you have a program too. And, I think yours is more one-on-one, right? Or is it a
yeah,
group?
yeah,
It's
it's
a
a
one-on-one.
one-on-one.
But the reason why you do that is to get somewhere faster than you could get on your own, not in a quick fix kind of way, right? Not like, oh, let me take this pill to numb the pain, but let me do the work. But this person's done it. So
Exactly.
they're going to show me the way, because otherwise it's me trying to take all of these little pieces of things from my environment, which is like essentially some of what you and I have had to do in the past. But it's like going to take longer to get there. It might take 20 years to get there with your movement practice. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you want to, feel better now, if you want to feel more connected now, if maybe movement is not your entire life and your teaching and what you're doing for your work, and you don't have that kind of time too, here's a way, here's like a really amplified, profound way to change your life in this way in a shorter period of time. And so for some people, like, yes, sign me up, which is great. And some people it's not for them, and that's okay too. But I think that's the beautiful thing about this, is like both of us taking our own experiences plus what we've studied, what we've learned, and creating something to share with people that they can get a lot out of.
Absolutely.
Like, I already want to
Absolutely.
send my people to you.
Exactly. It's like, here's a container for you, and within whatever, for you it's 6 weeks working with me, because I do acupuncture and some, like energy work and spiritual counseling in a 3-month container.
Right.
It's exactly what you said. Not that it's a shortcut per se, but it's just like getting you to the core a little bit faster, as opposed to like, oh my God, it took me 10 years to read all these books and find this out. When it's like, okay, here is someone who's done the work and is presenting it to you in a very organized manner. So
Right.
people can become better at whatever their goal was, being in touch with themselves, with their body, with their emotions, or just training. Amanda, it's been lovely talking to you. Your journey is truly remarkable, and I hope that you can really pass that a lovely energy that you have and the knowledge that you have to the people that will be working with you. Please let me
Thank
know
you.
how people can find you. Obviously on IG Live, they know that you're on Instagram. for people who will be watching us on YouTube, because I will be posting this on that platform as well. Is there a website where people can find
Yeah.
you, find out about your program? Tell me a little bit, and I will put it in the description box
Yeah,
for
that
the
would be
YouTube.
great. So my website is amandawinklermovement.com. So I'll give you the whole link for that you can put in. And that has just information about the different kinds of classes I teach, my background, and as well as the upcoming program that I have that starts on January 17th. So yeah, that's the main spot. And then on Instagram is Wink Yoga, which I've toyed with changing, but I'm like, it's just so easy.
Yeah, and I love it. I mean, your original last name obviously wasn't Winkler, but I feel like
No.
Winkler just, it's totally you. It's like everyone just took to Wink, and
Right?
it's like, wow, that's Amanda. We know her as Amanda Winkler, even though I knew you from before. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for joining
Yeah.
me today.
Thank
And
you.
I thank myself for joining your Instagram live, because we had issues with that.
Yes.
So
Thank you for, dealing with the technical issues I was having with my phone. And I will save that for both of us.
awesome. And thank you all who have tuned in. Have a lovely,
Thanks so
lovely
much,
day.
Christina. Bye.